Okay, good morning, freshmen. Happy Tuesday. Today we are just going to continue talking about sound, the element of sound in poetry, and the different aspects of that. So today we're going to focus specifically on rhyme. You all know what rhyming is. It's just when the final sounds of a word are the same as the final sound of another word shortly after. So fun and sun rhyme because they have that un sound at the end of them. But beyond those basic elements of rhyme, there's a lot of different kinds of rhyme. There's also different ways to use rhyme. There's lots of ways that rhyme is incorporated into poetry. So we're just going to talk a little bit more in depth about rhyme and kind of some of its nuances today to give you guys a little bit more in-depth understanding of rhyme, especially the role it plays in poetry. So rhyming, like I said, is just the repetition of similar vowel sounds or vowel and consonant combinations. So anytime you have sounds that are similar in words that are closely put together to kind of create a sing-songy sort of rhythm. So there's three different types of rhymes that we're going to focus on: end rhyme, internal rhyme, and slant rhyme. I'm referencing the slideshow right here on my computer. If you are wondering, I'm going right along with the slides so that everything I'm saying matches what you have. So the first one is end rhyme, and end rhyme is just when the word at the end of a line of poetry is the same as the word at the end of the next line of poetry, or every other line of poetry rhymes. So some examples of that would be the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song: in West Philadelphia, born and raised, in the playground is where I spent most of my days. So he rhymes that last word raised with days. It's a little bit of a forced rhyme. They don't totally rhyme, but the sound is similar enough, and that kind of keeps the beat and the rhythm going in that song. So that's end rhyme. Sometimes you have songs where every other line rhymes. So the first line sounds different than the next one, and then the third line it rhymes with the first one. So that's called an A-B-A-B rhyme scheme. An example of that is It's Tricky by Run DMC. That is a song that most of you are probably familiar with. But they have the "It's tricky to rock a rhyme, that's right on time. It's tricky, 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 tricky." And then the next line is "It's tricky to rock a rhyme, that's right on time." And then the fourth line is "It's tricky, 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 tricky." So the second and fourth lines rhyme, and the first and third lines rhyme. So that's an A-B-A-B rhyme scheme, where every other line rhymes. Or you have like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song, where he goes on and rhymes about his transformation from living in West Philadelphia to going to Bel-Air and that whole journey. If you have seen the show or know the song, you know what I'm talking about. But that's an A-A-B-B rhyme scheme because the first two lines rhyme, and then he changes the rhyme scheme in lines 3 and 4. But all of those are examples of end rhyme. And it's just when the last words of the line rhyme, but there's nothing that rhymes necessarily within the lines. So it's basically like a sentence, and then the last word rhymes with the last word of the next line or the third line, or however the rhyme scheme is laid out. But they all utilize end rhyme because it's the last lines that rhyme. So that's basically end rhyme for you. Internal rhyme is when you have a rhyme within a line of poetry. So if I was to say, "There's fun to be done under the sun," that's all one line. That's not necessarily multiple lines of poetry, but there's multiple rhymes within that single line. So that's an example of internal rhyme. And then basically all internal rhyme is, like I said, just within one line of poetry. It's internal. You have multiple different examples of rhyming. So that one's pretty straightforward. And then you have slant rhyme, and that can be part of end rhyme or part of internal rhyme. It can exist both at the end of a line or within a line. But basically it's just when the rhyme is kind of forced. So the two words don't necessarily rhyme exactly. They just kind of sound similar enough that it works. So an example of that is if you're familiar with Florida Georgia Line, they have their song Meant to Be. In the first stanza, line A, "Baby, lay on back and relax, kick your pretty feet up on my dash." So that's an A end rhyme scheme, but it's a slant rhyme because relax and dash don't actually rhyme. They just have similar sounding, like that vowel sound is similar. And so we call it a rhyme scheme. It's a slant rhyme scheme because it's not an exact sound matchup, but it sounds similar enough that it maintains the pattern. So that's a slant rhyme. And then lines 3 and 4, we have the BB, so it's an AABB rhyme scheme because they have new sounds. No need to go nowhere fast. Let's enjoy right here where we at. So at and fast obviously also don't completely rhyme. It's not an exact rhyme. It's a slant rhyme because it's a little bit forced. So those are things that you see a lot in songs, especially as a form of poetry, is people using slant rhyme and people using end rhyme and internal rhyme, mainly to maintain a sort of rhythm and to maintain a sort of beat. Every once in a while, you'll see someone break the rhyme scheme. Like if you think of 21 Pilots, they do that a lot, and that's usually to draw your attention to that specific line. So you're focusing on those specific lyrics, because if you're used to a rhyme scheme and a pattern that's continuing, you kind of get lost in that lull. And so when a writer tends to break it, if a poet or a songwriter, whoever it is, breaks that rhyme scheme, then that draws your attention away from the rhyme, and it draws your attention to the words that they just said, which helps you focus more and helps kind of usually bring out the meaning or some emphasis within the song. So when you establish a rhyme scheme and then break it, that's also a really intentional move to kind of draw some attention to those words and make your meaning really clear. As with everything else that we've talked about with poetry, sound is used to kind of reinforce meaning, to draw out a mood, to make the tone and the attitude really clear. Rhyme does the same thing. If you have constant rhymes again and again in a row, it creates more of a sing-songy sort of feeling. That's usually associated more with like upbeat, happier stuff. If you have more harsh rhymes, or you have more slant rhyme, or you have less rhyming, like you have a song where they don't have a ton of rhyming, usually that is associated with kind of a more emotional mood, something maybe that's a little more sad or a little more angry, something like that. So that's how rhyme is used to help establish mood and help establish attitude in the poem, in the song, whatever it is that you are using the sound aspect for. And yeah, that's just a little bit about rhyme. We will talk more about various rhyme schemes when we get into form and start talking about things like haikus and sonnets and stuff like that. But for now, it's just important that you understand what rhyme is and those three different kinds of rhyme. So just to reiterate, you have end rhyme. That's when everything at the end of the lines matches up sound-wise. So you have rhyme at the end of the lines. And then you have internal rhyme. So that's when within one line you have lots of rhymes. So what I just said was an internal rhyme, because within that one sentence, I used that I am sound multiple times. I just did it again. Wow, look at me. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. And then slant rhyme, once again, is when the rhyming sound is a little bit forced. It's not exactly a rhyme. It's kind of a little bit like, the sound is similar, but we know that's not the exact sound lining up. So those are the three different types of rhymes that exist. There's multiple different rhyme schemes out there, but the main ones that you see in songs and poetry are A, B, A, B, or A, A, B, B in the stanzas. And most commonly you see stanzas in lines of 4. That's not always the case, and again, this is all stuff we'll talk about more when we get into form. But for now, you just need to understand the basics of rhyme, which is stuff you've all kind of been familiar with since you were like 5 years old. We're just digging a little bit deeper into it and kind of going to look more at the way that poets tend to use it to create meaning and attitude. And again, that just has to go, if they're trying to create a happier tone, they're going to use more sing-songy type rhyme. They're going to use rhyme a lot more. If they're trying to be more serious, maybe they'll break the rhyme scheme. Maybe they'll use a really abrupt rhyme scheme where the sound is kind of more harsh and not really kind of sing-songy. Different examples like that. So what I'm going to do is link a couple different songs that have examples of various types of rhyme schemes, just so you can get kind of familiar with these types of rhymes. Otherwise, that is it for today. Tomorrow we will talk more about rhythm, which goes along with rhyme perfectly. And then Thursday we'll talk about some of those final outside elements of sound. And then remember, Friday is technically a PIR day, so I will be working, but you have the day off. So yes, any questions, please just comment below or email me. Thanks.